Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Day in the Life of on Beyond Privilege. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Tosin, who is the founder of the Energy Africa. And Tosin, I think I'd like to start off by asking you, can you introduce the Energy Africa, maybe tell us some background information about the company, and just explain to us what you're doing with the company?
All right. Thank you, Jack. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tosin George, as Jacqueline mentioned, and I'm the founder of the Energy Africa. And we describe ourselves as a media and tech platform. And I started the Energy Africa as a result of my own experiences when I joined the renewable energy industry in 2020. So at the time I joined the industry, it was a bit difficult for me to navigate the different, spaces. And because here in Nigeria, the renewable energy industry, is still growing. It's sort of still in its nascent stages, if I can say that. And so for me, it just felt like people in the energy industry at the time in 2020 were all people with technical backgrounds. You sort of had to be like a solar engineer. And I didn't have that background. So it was tough for me to think of, how do I get into the industry? What would I be doing in the industry? What if I were to look at somebody's LinkedIn profile and they say, for example, that they're a climate finance analyst, what does that mean? What do they do in their day to day? What do they consider soft skills? What do they consider hard skills? What do they really do? Right? What does their role truly mean? And so that was how I actually started the Energy Africa, to sort of provide a hub, a knowledge hub, a community that promotes African energy professionals, that promotes African energy businesses, that promotes African energy ideas and innovation. And we started last year in August 2023. We started with a series called My Energy Life, which sort of documents the career journey of African energy professionals. And or till date, we have featured about 30 African energy professionals, and I'm so proud of that, from about 15 countries. We've reached, say, more than 46,000 individuals, via our LinkedIn page. So it's been a very interesting journey. And at the moment, we're also exploring different ideas. Because we're such a young company, we're trying as much as possible to evolve with the times, right, and understand what it is that the industry is and how to present information in the best way relevant. And so aside the energy life, we're also considering exploring a podcast for very senior women in the space. You know how it is that you have senior women or you have women in senior leadership in the space, and you just want to understand how is it that they got there. What were the things that they did to get to where they are today? And there's this statistic that I used to follow that talked about the fact that um, only 6% of leadership positions are, or rather, the leadership positions are only occupied by 6% of women in the energy industry, and that's globally. So imagine what the percentages would be for women in Africa. So also looking at that podcast to where we'll be inviting very senior women and understanding, what it is that they did, how they started from where they were many years ago to where they are now. So that's something we're also exploring something for startups as well. I'm Nigerian. I live in Lagos, Nigeria, and there's so much attention given to fintech spaces, and I feel very jealous, right? They get all the attention, they get all the investment, and doesn't mean that investment doesn't come into the energy tech spaces as well. But then again, as much as money is important, energy is also a very important part of our lives. It's a very important part of our day-to-day life. So we're also looking at something to promote and highlight startups, energy startups in this space. Something we're also considering is something around art. I find myself to be quite artistic in a way. So we're also thinking of how art can intertwine, the climate spaces and the renewable energy spaces as well. So that is a nutshell with what we do, or what I do, or what we do rather at the Energy Africa. Thank you, Jack.
It's really interesting, Toast, and amazing to hear all the sort of cool things that you're doing with the Energy Africa and moving forward. I'm sure it's going to be a really exciting project. The next question that I kind of wanted to ask you was, what are the kind of things that you've done in your career so far to get to the position that you're in today, whether that be, training, learning, development, just those kind of things would be great to know.
Okay. I've been in the industry for about 4 years now, so I don't consider that a very long career. But then I think that what has sort of defined my career till date is the fact that I'm a little very persistent. Right. So before I joined the solar industry, I was very interested in biofuels, bioenergy. In fact, when I was in uni, I did a project on the production of bioplastic from cassava starch. And this was as a result of the fact that we in Nigeria, we have packaged water called pure water. If you're Nigerian, you familiar what I mean. So we have bottled water that everybody knows, but we also have water that comes in sachets and they're called pure water. And in school that time, people would buy pure water and litter the entire environment. You see the sachets all over the place. And I thought, okay, how can I contribute to, to solving, or what solutions can I come up with that sort of contributes to solving this maintenance? And then I came up with the idea of creating bioplastic from cassava starch. So I was very much interested in biofuels, bioplastics, and all of those things. In fact, I even went all the way to Songhai Farm. Songhai Farm is one of the largest farms in West Africa. And at the time, they had a project, not a project, but they had a program for young African leaders. And I was on the farm for 6 months because they did all kinds of things in addition to biofuel production, because that was what interested me at the time. And so when I came out of that, I was looking for opportunities in the the biofuel space. But here in Nigeria, it's a bit not, it's not a structured an industry. It's not very regulated, right? So people sort of just go from their own and create all kinds of things. So I didn't find too much structure in that space. And I then decided to, think of the next best thing, which in my mind at the time was solar. So I moved into the solar industry, and it's a funny thing that I didn't even get, my first job in solar it didn't just land in my lap. I literally had to look for it. And because when I started to think of transitioning into the solar space, I realized that my network was a bit small. So I didn't really know, although I was interested in the space, but I didn't really know who did what, who's a solar engineer, how can I get into the space. So I started to think of expanding my network. So I went on LinkedIn, and then I started to reach out to people, in the space, introducing myself, saying something like, my name is Tosin George. I'm a renewable energy enthusiast, and I would love to have a chat with you. Some people said yes, they'd like to have a chat, and we chatted pretty much about, the space, what's happening in the space and what I'm considering doing in the space, right? And so I did this on LinkedIn. I'm sure I must have reached out to about maybe 1,500 people in the space of 1 month or so, like that, to the point that LinkedIn banned me. They had to ban my account because I was connected too much. But then it was a very positive experience for me, because I found that people were quite supportive. So they came up with ideas around, oh, these are the resources you can do. How about you take these courses? How about you meet this person? How about you try this, try that? And somehow in that search was how I got my first job, with a solar installation company. And that was like the beginning of my career in the space. And at that time, this solar company was taking on really big projects. So they had a 1 megawatt project they were doing at the time. 1 megawatt at the time was about 3,000 solar panels. So that was a lot. And it brought me very close to how these things are done, how solar installations are done. And so that was a very interesting journey for me. And then from there, I moved on to a solar education company that was very passionate about bringing people into the space. The solar energy workforce in Nigeria, or rather the industry is quite small. And so the workforce is not as plentiful as you'd expect. So the company at the time was very focused on training, developing, and placing these trained individuals within organizations in the country. So, and in my time there, I think I worked as an operations person, and I facilitated a lot of programs, about maybe 8 different cohorts of programs within a year. And that benefited more than 3,000 young people across the state. So that was a very interesting time as well. I worked with a group of renewable energy young, passionate people, and we came up with an idea around producing electricity from oil palm biomass waste. So because Nigeria is one of the largest producers of palm oil I think, in Nigeria, in Africa, and I think the fourth largest in the world. So we have a lot of palm oil, and then there's a lot of waste that's generated from that. So we're thinking of ideas around electrification services, and we pitched that idea to ISC3. ISC3 is the International Sustainable Collaborative Chemistry Center, something like that. And then we won a 5,000 euro award, for that idea. And then from then on, I then started to move into consulting. So at the moment, I consult for a solar company. I also consult for a career development company in the UK. And then after that was that when after doing all of that was when I then started the Energy Africa. So I have a lot of things on my plate, but the journey from 2020 till now has been nothing short of really amazing. There's been a lot of ups and downs, obviously, for everyone, but it's been a very interesting journey from where I started to where I am today. So I'm very grateful for all the opportunities, and the time I spent reaching out to people was something that was pivotal. If I didn't reach out, I would not be getting the opportunities that I had. So that was something that I found quite beneficial to my career journey in this space. Thanks, Jack.
It's really interesting, Tosin. Thank you. And you touch on building a personal brand, which really resonates with me because I've also done the same sort of coming up in my career. Sort of moving on from that, I'd really like to sort of understand, what does a typical day in the life look like for you? So if you could, run us through that, that'd be amazing.
All right. So aside my usual job, my 9 to 5, working or doing my job as a co-founder at the Energy Africa could be, it's a mix of several things, right? So within my Energy Live series, we typically have guests that come on every week, that we publish every week. And, there's a little back and forth in, creating that content that goes out that you see every week on LinkedIn. And so a lot of my days are spent with the team. So I work on my team in 2-week sprints, and we sort of outline the task for the next 2 weeks. A lot of my time is spent reviewing content that would go out. I also spend a lot of time thinking through collaboration. So we have a couple of collaborations in the bag, and I spend so much time thinking of what's the next collaboration, what's the next partnership, what's the next thing to do next month, all of those things. Sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm already thinking of how we can collaborate. So yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that. And there's also the creative process that goes into what the series are. So with what we have, well, like I mentioned earlier, we're also exploring all the series. So like the podcast, which is due to be published possibly at the end of the month or very early May. We're also considering something for startups, like I mentioned earlier. So I spend a lot of time, just thinking through what is the process for us? What are we going to do with this series? What are these series going to, what do we want the series to accomplish? What are other ways that we can make it better? So I do all of this with the team. There's always the back and forth. And yeah, so typically my day runs that way. Meetings, creative thinking process through what the series should be. On some days, I could spend the entire day just reviewing content. On another day is a mix of all of those things I've just described. So, but it's a very amazing journey, and something that I find that gives me a lot of joy is when we publish this series, because we tend to pay so much attention to people that are celebrated in the space, and we often forget that there are amazing people doing beautiful, relevant, important work in the field. And having the opportunity to publish them gives me so much joy. It gives me amazing joy. Like yesterday, we published a renewable energy professional, Mizan, Massa. She's worked across the Ethiopian, West African energy sectors and was even in charge of exporting energy to other countries, I think Sudan and Djibouti, something like that. And so it's so amazing to see the work that these people do. And it's important that they're highlighted. It's important that they're promoted because for many people joining the industry, they don't exactly have, they don't exactly understand how the industry works. So who does what? What does it mean that somebody does? So if looking at those series, you can say, okay, if Mizana has done this, that means I can do this, or these are my own skills and I feel like I can fit in here. Oh, Mizana said that these are the things that she considers hard skills. Okay, do I have those hard skills? How can I acquire those skills? So it's just what we're trying to do is push forward advanced renewable energy solutions, but using the stories of these African energy professionals, using the journeys of the startups that you see in the African energy ecosystem, and pushing boundaries, pushing ideas, pushing innovation, because as Africans, we can't design our solutions to fit our own problems. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we have that community that keeps pushing the solutions forward. So that's it. My what I do daily as a founder at Energy Africa.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, Tosin. I think we're going to go on to some questions from the chat now, and I'll start off with this one. So, what advice would you give to young people in rural areas looking to launch their own business?
Ah, I typically don't like to give advice. I always believe people should figure things out on their own. But if I would say anything, I think the first thing is to be bold. You really have to own the idea. So you can't shrink back and say, oh, this idea might not, it's not, I'm not sure. You really have to own the idea and be ready to push the idea and fight to see that that idea is materialized. Another thing that I would say is persistence. There's something about just being persistent, keep pushing. And as we all know, it takes time for things to eventually come to fruition. It takes time for things to eventually become the success that you want to see. So persistence is very key. Another thing that I found to be very powerful is consistency. Seeing how we've been able to publish articles every week. It's not been, I come to my, as you say in Nigeria, it's not been, publishing articles every week and then thinking of new art series to publish as well. And I still have that on with my 9 to 5. It's not, I tell you, it's not something easy, but every week somehow we get published, we get people published. And that consistency I've seen has paid us in multiple ways I can't imagine. So I'll just reiterate that consistency, persistence, then being bold with where the idea, own the idea, push the idea. You can't be shy, with these ideas. You can't retreat and say, oh, I'm not sure, maybe I should do this. And another thing I would also say is start with what you have. The Energy Africa should have started a year before it actually started. But I was waiting for, what was I even waiting for? I think I was waiting for, I wanted us to have, a website. I wanted us to have, really cute stuff. I wanted it to be this way, that way. I wanted it to be perfect, And with me, when I start things, I have sort of like a standard in my head, and everything I do has to match that standard. And if it doesn't match that standard or it falls short, I tend to struggle. But one thing that pushed me to start was I'd done something similar at the Energy Institute when myself and my co-founder Osele volunteered. And we'd done something similar. And then I was checking through LinkedIn one day and I realized that she had, on LinkedIn, you always have these featured links. People use featured links to highlight a post that they want people to pay attention to. And then I saw that she had put the interview we did with her in the featured links. And it then struck me that she found this really important such that, she put that in our featured links. So it was something that I felt, we had to start. So that same week, I got started, designed the logo, designed everything that we needed, designed the form, started to reach out to people I thought would be perfect for the series, and I just got started. So you shouldn't wait for things to be perfect. There's this adage, or is it proverb, that says that something about farmers: if you wait for the perfect times, you will never plant. If you wait for everything to be perfect, you'll never plant. And that was what happened, with me at the very beginning when I should have started. I kept wasting time. I wasted about 9 months. Something I should have started in January. I didn't start until September because I wanted perfect times. We still don't have everything. We don't have a website. We were pretty much on LinkedIn. We don't have all the things that I thought we should have before starting, but here we are today. So I think it's important that you get started with what you have. Be bold with the idea, be persistent, and most importantly, be very, very consistent. I think that's a multiplier. Consistency sort of like multiplies your efforts, right? So that's what I would say regarding advice for young people that want to get into this space.
Thanks, Tosin. That's really interesting. We've had another question come in which said, which training resources did you use which helped? So that can sort of be around, setting up your business or, finding ways into the industry, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I like to think of myself as a very aggressive finder of opportunities. So I'm always online checking for opportunities that apply to me and how best to take advantage of them. But one thing I think was pivotal to founding the Energy Africa was my MBA program. So I'd applied to Quantic School of Business and Technology, and I was able to get a full scholarship to do an MBA with them. And that sort of, set my eyes and my focus on how to sort of run things, whether it's a business or any other project. So that's what on the business side of things. I've also kept myself up and running, kept knowledge up with all the training facilities. I recently did some course for women in climate leadership with C40 CTs. There are a couple of other training resources I've taken advantage of. There are a lot of accelerator programs to get in the business line. So there's always some sort of support that you can take advantage of, but you have to find those opportunities. Join communities, because you can't do everything by yourself. You can't sit in your house and assume that things will find you somehow. You have to be the one to look for this opportunity. So join communities, reach out to people on LinkedIn, connect with people on LinkedIn, right? In connecting with the relevant people on LinkedIn, you see opportunities on their timelines, take advantage of those opportunities. If you don't know how to apply, reach out to those that can support you. So you don't have to do everything by yourself, even though I myself, I like to be very independent and not depend on anyone. But then I've seen the folly of that. And I've come to appreciate the importance of partnership and collaboration. If you don't know how to do something, there's nothing wrong in not knowing how to do something. But then can you ask someone to help? Oh, can you help me with this? Or I'm having issues doing this. How do I go about this? All of those things. So I think that for me, the MBA program did help with the business side of things, and then constantly taking trainings for the renewable energy space and climate spaces as well. So that's what I would say in regards to that.
Thank you, Tosin. We've had another question come in and it says, where 91% of startups fail, how are you ensuring your business plan succeeds?
Okay, so we're like 7 months in operation, and I cannot say for sure what the next 5 years is going to be, or the next 2 years. But something I think would be beneficial for us as a company is to listen. So not to just come up with ideas that we think are just amazing and that no one has done before, but understanding how these ideas are beneficial to the audience that we are targeting. So is this relevant to them? Is it something important to them? Will they use what we're doing? Do they see a benefit with what we're doing? So this is how we plan to remain sustainable for as long as possible and relevant for as long as possible. Listening to the audience, understanding the times, understanding the trends, understanding how to remain relevant, understanding how to evolve, as time evolves. So that's something that's something that we do, or that's something that we keep at the core of our business at the Energy Africa.
Thanks, Tosin. I think we'll take one more question. And this one says, what has been your biggest challenge as an entrepreneur to date?
Hmm. I think it's a bit early for us because I don't think I've come across such a huge challenge as such. And maybe because we're still a bit early in business. So what I see as challenges are not, or what I consider a challenge, and maybe delays or something unplanned for, but not such a huge challenge. I would see, oh, this is the greatest challenge we've ever faced. No. So my response to this question will be that we are yet to face our biggest challenge yet. That's where we are at this point.
No, I'm sure because your business is so young, it's still coming up, and there's going to be some
Yeah.
challenges down the line, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Tosin. It's been really interesting to listen to your story, and I'm sure everybody can connect with you on Beyond Privilege.
Yes, of course. You can connect
Okay.
with us on the Energy Africa. They also have my account there, Tosin, I think 2023, but just go to St. George. You should find me on Beyond Privilege. You can also connect to me on LinkedIn or to us at the Energy Africa on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for everyone listening, and we will see you at the next one. And thanks again, Tosin.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely